And so the new year in the United States began with a wave of violent attacks, leaving 16 dead and many injured in New Orleans, Las Vegas, and even Queens. US President-elect Donald Trump took to platform X and slammed the outgoing US President Joe Biden and his open border policy. Trump posted, and let me quote, he says that our country is a disaster, a laughing stock all over the world. This is what happens when you have open borders with weak, ineffective, and virtually non-existent leadership. The DOJ, FBI, and Democrat state and local prosecutors have not done their job. They are incompetent and corrupt, having spent all of their waking hours unlawfully attacking their political opponent. Rather than focusing on protecting Americans from the outside and inside, violent scum that has infiltrated all aspects of our government and our nation itself. Democrats should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this to happen to our country. The CIA must get involved now before it is too late. The USA is breaking down. A violent erosion of safety, national security, and democracy is taking place all across our nation. Only strength and powerful leadership will stop it. See you on January 20th. Make America great again. With the Biden open border policy, I said many times during rallies and elsewhere that radical Islamic terrorism and other forms of violent crime will become so bad in America that it will become hard to even imagine or believe. That time has come, only worse than ever imagined. Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of America, a complete and total disaster. What he and his group of election-interfering thugs have done to our country will not soon be forgotten. And so one of the common aspects of the devastating incidents in New Orleans and Los Angeles were the fact that the primary suspects of the New Year's Day attacks were US military men. This has now raised questions and concerns about the rising trend of extremism within the US Armed Forces. The suspect behind the truck that caused a rampage and killed 14 in New Orleans was a man named Shamsud-Din Jabbar, who was a US Army veteran. Meanwhile, the man who was allegedly behind the explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, Matthew Livelsberger, was an active duty service member in the Army. From New Orleans to Las Vegas, are we now witnessing a return of the Islamic State spreading its global influence? Exclusive intel assessment note accessed by CNN News 18 in fact says that the ISIS has smelt an opportunity to expand its footprint after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria.
More than a dozen people were killed by a man crashing his pickup truck into a crowd in New Orleans on New Year's Day. Several more people were injured by the attack on revelers in the city's French Quarter. Reuters obtained the following of first responders in the aftermath. Some viewers may find graphic. It happened around 3:15 a.m. at the intersection of Canal and Bourbon Streets, a historic tourist destination. An eyewitness said she heard the rev of an engine, a loud impact, then screams.
And debris, just metal, the sound of crunching metal and bodies.
Police say the driver was 42-year-old Shamsud-Din Jabbar, an Army veteran from Texas. Officers said they found an ISIS flag in the vehicle. Jabbar was said to be in full military gear, subsequently got in a shootout with police and was killed. The incident has prompted an investigation into possible links to terrorist organizations. Investigators say they found weapons and potential explosives in the suspect's vehicle. They also say he may not have acted alone. A search is ongoing for his known associates. Public records show Jabbar worked in real estate in Houston. He had spent 10 years in the US military as a human resources and IT specialist and had been deployed to Afghanistan. US President Joe Biden condemned the attack in a media briefing and revealed more details about Jabbar.
The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill.
Biden also said investigators were checking for any link to a vehicle explosion outside Trump Tower in Las Vegas, but that no evidence had been found so far. ISIS, also called Islamic State or ISIL, is a Muslim militant group. It once imposed a reign of terror in Iraq and Syria until it collapsed from fighting a US-led coalition. Experts say ISIS has continued to recruit sympathizers online. Following the attack, New Orleans postponed college football's Sugar Bowl, which is played each year on New Year's Day. The city will also be the site of the NFL Super Bowl on February 9th.
I'm also joined in by Edward P. Joseph of John Hopkins SAIS. Thank you, Edward, for joining in on CNN News 18. Pleasure to have you, as always. 3 attacks, out of which 2 are being probed as linked incidents of terrorism. What does it speak of the threat to U.S. national security and the changing face of terrorism?
Akanksha, first, very good to see you. Happy New Year to you and, of course, to all of your viewers. And this is a reminder here of simply the vulnerability of any society, any open society, to this type of a suicide terrorist attack. This is not unique by any means to the United States. In fact, this very type of attack just occurred a few weeks ago in Germany at a Christmas market. And there's simply no real defense against someone who's determined to take the lives of innocent people. You simply cannot defend every possible public space. So there's an inherent vulnerability here that exists in any open society. And that's a fact. And so the emphasis goes on intelligence gathering. And of course, the United States has actually been quite effective at that, at penetrating a lot of organizations, at catching a lot of individuals who otherwise would have attempted such attacks. But you can't get 100%, Akanksha. It's simply not possible.
It's interesting that you talk about intelligence gathering, because that's why I have to refer to what happened in October. An Afghan national was arrested in October last year for plotting an election day terrorist attack in the name of ISIS, not to forget the recent German Christmas market attack. Given such threats, do you think that the US security was not adequately ramped up around a critical timing like New Year's?
Akanksha, of course, you can, and there will be, as there are in any, and this is, of course, the inherent advantage of in a democratic society, is that there is accountability. There's accountability for officials. So there will have to be accountability for the police, for the city of New Orleans, for others, when they look at their security procedures and where they know in Bourbon Street, where a lot of people are going to congregate, what type of obstacles do they have in place? And they will do that. I'm confident the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana and others will do that. But it's simply, the focus cannot be on you have to prevent every single attack. You cannot. If someone walks into a store today and opens fire, there's simply no defense against that, against someone. Again, the real way, the most effective way, is through prevention. And the U.S. has been remarkably effective at penetrating a lot of these cells, at using informants and getting informants to discuss. There have been a number of attacks, potential attacks, where the informants, the FBI, in a very clever way, engages then in a conversation with the individual. And there was one where the individual was headed to Canada and bringing in his materials into Canada, attempting an attack in the United States. But Akanksha, there's a wider question here. There's a wider political question here as to what animates someone to do this. Why would someone here, an Army veteran who's lived in the United States, American citizen, obviously completely part of our fabric and our society.
And that's why I am coming to my next question, Edward. The US President-elect Donald Trump was quick in attacking the Biden administration for its border wall policy, even though the New Orleans attacker is not an undocumented immigrant? Why is immigration going to be now at the forefront? Should it also not be about addressing the issue of terrorism, one that's emanating from Middle East?
Akanksha, I'm glad you raised that because it's absurd for President-elect Trump to reference this in the context of immigration. This was a U.S. citizen. He is an Army veteran. I'm an Army veteran. I mean, you can't get more established into our society than serving in our military services. So it's absurd to raise this in the context of immigration. It's not, and that has not traditionally or always been the source. 9/11, different case. But in many cases, there were other terrible attacks, an ISIS-related attack in California that did not have an immigration component to it either. So it's false to that. The wider question, Akanksha, is the ideology, this persistent ideology. What is animating this? And let's turn here. And I think, Akanksha, what's so interesting is 2025 as we enter this year versus 2024. 2024 was all about Gaza, Israel, phrases like globalize the intifada, the protests, and so forth. And then, of course, we had the dramatic turnaround in Lebanon, the dramatic turnaround in Syria with the fall of Bashar Assad. And I will just share with you, Akanksha, the question we should all be asking about the motivation for this nihilistic, destructive motivation that we're going to somehow advance our goals by attacking completely innocent, random people.
Right.
And I refer you to two quotes here, please, from the New York Times, that in Lebanon, after finally, thankfully, the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, there were two different quotes that stand out to me. One Lebanese citizen said, you know what? Why do we citizens of Lebanon have to suffer because Israel and Palestinians have a dispute? We want to have a normal country here. We want to build our country. That's one Lebanese citizen. The other Lebanese citizen, obviously a partisan of Hezbollah, comes to destroy neighborhood south of Beirut, southern part of Beirut. And you know what he says, Akanksha? He says, the resistance continues. Resistance to what?
Right.
What?
Right.
This is the question. You have one choice in the Middle East of citizens who want to build their country, who want to create a future for the children.
That's why, Edward, I want to ask, when you talk about Donald Trump's promises of ending the two wars, have they been premature promises given the security challenges now coming to the forefront in the United States? Given the fragile timing of these attacks also, you're days away from the 4th anniversary of the Capitol riot and Trump's inauguration. Are the three attacks now a wake-up call for the incoming Trump administration and the challenges that await him in his own country?
I think, Akanksha, yes, to some degree, and it's a good point that you raised. Of course, this is a reminder, simply a reminder, but of the threat that comes from this extremist ideology that promotes this nihilistic, destructive ideology that indoctrinates people into thinking that they're somehow accomplishing something by attacking these random people. One was a young woman who was about to enter nursing school.
Yes.
And so what have you accomplished by this destruction? That's why I'm telling you, those two different choices, to build or to destroy. Those are the two ideologies that we create. But yes, Akanksha, you're right. It's a reminder of the threat, but I don't believe the United States ever took its eye off the ball. I don't think that that's accurate. Again, I tell you, the FBI has caught a number of potential perpetrators in very sophisticated ways of trying to prevent, but you simply cannot prevent all attacks.
Let's see.
Please.
Let's see what's in store when Donald Trump comes to the White House on 20th. Many thanks to you, Edward, for joining in. It was a pleasure speaking to you as always.